this sparks an even bigger question for the San Antonio Spurs, as rumors and reports are running wild about Devin Vassell's future. A recent article has highlighted a very interesting trade between the Boston Celtics and the San Antonio Spurs once again that brings in an even better shooter, but this just, again, expands the horizons as to what Devin Vassell's future and the Spurs' future at the wing position looks like. We got to dive into this big question plus much more, all coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest. But I want to start here. There was an interesting article that I read, and I'll link it down below. As always, give the author the credit they deserve here, from Arya Chawla, and I thought it raised some interesting questions about Dylan Harper. And I know we'll get to Vassell, we'll get to Anfernee Simons if you saw him there in the thumbnail in just a bit, because again, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. Anyway, that's going to be really interesting. But Dylan Harper, look, we know what Dylan Harper is. We know what he's looking to bring. But Arya explores here the good and the bad for the Spurs. And I kind of have my opinions of this, and I want to hear your guys' opinions of this as well, because look, let's be honest, when you look at the San Antonio Spurs depth chart this year, it's looking like Dylan Harper is going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and I'm not seeing many downsides to it, right? The only downside is that, the number 2 overall pick is not going to have the ball in his hands as much as maybe he would on a team that is fully ready to give him the reins. And I know we get comments all the time saying, hey, why did we extend Fox if we have Harper? We also get other comments saying, hey, it's perfectly fine, less pressure on Harper. I know you guys will be battling it out down there, but in this article, they kind of said the good is a ball handling focus. And this is not something that I necessarily thought of as like a biggest strength. And I'll tell you why. Because when you look again at the San Antonio Spurs, we have a lot of ball handlers. And I think Dylan Harper will have the ball in his hands a lot for sure, but Victor Wembanyama is going to serve as an offensive engine for a lot of our possessions. De'Aaron Fox is going to have the ball in his hands a ton, the most on this team this year, and there's no doubt about that in my mind. But Stephon Castle has also played a lot of minutes at the one, or at least the pseudo one, where he is handling the ball. Even guys like Sochan, while he's not going to play the point guard position again, I can pretty much guarantee you that, there is a world where he can kind of serve as a bit of an offensive hub on occasion. So Dylan Harper, look, we're going to give him all the opportunity in the world. But I don't know if I would actually say that the ball handling focus is one of the biggest things for him. I think the biggest thing for Dylan Harper is that when he's getting his minutes, he's going to be out there most of the time against other bench units. And what better way to get into your flow in the NBA? I am of the opinion that Dylan Harper is going to make himself inevitable for the Spurs very, very soon. Like, he's going to get to the point where his numbers, his production, and his impact on the floor is going to force you to play him more, maybe against other starting lineups, stuff like that. But, in terms of like a Manu type role, a guy who has the poise to be a star, coming in against bench units, feasting against them, but you can still put them out in crunch time. That's what I'm looking forward to for Dylan Harper. Get him into that rhythm early. Don't have him go up against these top tier lineups at every moment. So to me, that's the big thing. I'm curious about you guys. But the downside, I found this one a little interesting as well. Shorter leash for mistakes. And when it comes to Harper, I don't think that this is a bad thing. Again, like, I kind of struggle to see how, I get how having a shorter leash for mistakes might frustrate a player, but I think it's also good in a way. I mean, look, it can be good or bad, and this is why I needed to bring your guys' thoughts into this, because I'm clearly split on two minds here, but ultimately, when we're talking shorter leash for mistakes, that almost should be the case, right? You want to come in and you want to impress the team and force yourself into the rotation. You have guys like Fox and Castle that are ready to take those ball handling minutes if you're not showing up right away, right? And, yes, there's the aspect of, oh, well, you can't pull him too early because then he's not going to get into a rhythm. I don't anticipate that's what Mitch Johnson's going to do. I think if Dylan Harper is just, not really rolling, I think we're actually fortunate to have the guard depth that will help out to support him to get, hey, this is what you did wrong. We're going to be here. We're going to cover for you now, Castle, Fox, whatever, and you can keep rolling. So to me, like, maybe that's me being too optimistic, too sunshine, rainbows. Everything's going to be good for Dylan Harper. There really is no bad side. To me, I think the only bad side, again, is like, I wish he would have time for more minutes. But ultimately for the Spurs right now, there's not that much time. And look, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because there are some pros, some cons to Harper, but I really like exploring these because I know the comments are gonna shed some more light on this. But I want to move on to the trade idea right here, right now. And before we do, I want to just say that we are so close to 10,000 subscribers. You guys have been supporting like crazy. We're 5 minutes into this video. If you like these videos, every single day, even at this time in the offseason, every single day. We got your back. We got lots of big stuff planned for this year, but I want to go to an Air Alamo article and link down below as well, where a very interesting trade was proposed. Because look, we know Devin Vassell. We've talked about him a lot. If you look at the Spurs payroll, you look at the future of this team, he's the obvious candidate for a trade because of that $27 million per year contract until the end of the 28-29 season. It just kind of makes him a little bit expendable considering the other wing depth that we have and guard depth that we have. Stephon Castle maybe moves to the 3. Dylan Harper ends up starting like alongside Fox. And anyway, there's so much depth there that it's hard to see a vision for Devin Vassell longer term, who is again a 2/3, who has incredible upside. Just a few years ago, he shot 38% from 3 on a lot of attempts a game. This past year, recovering from a foot injury, hasn't been his best. And this trade idea actually sends him, there's Dylan Harper stats, didn't have that, sends him to the Boston Celtics. And so Boston actually gets Devin Vassell, a 2028 pick swap, and a 2027 first in exchange for Anfernee Simons. And this opens again a bigger question for me. And this is why I titled the video this way, because the ultimate question is, what is Devin Vassell's worth in a trade if we decide to move on from him? Because, just hear me out here. If we're looking at Devin Vassell purely statistically, this dude is a great player. This past year is, in my mind, an outlier. Again, there's frustration. I get it. He was recovering from a foot injury. He himself said he was not fully healthy. When healthy, this guy is a very impactful player that a lot of teams are going to want, especially with a rising cap. $27 million is not that much for a guy that can touch 20 points per game, and especially if he can get back to that 37-38% from 3, 48% from the field, which is not out of the realm of possibility. That could be good. But if we're trading him, it's for one of two reasons. It's one, we want to have more flexibility with the cap to bring in other guys around Victor Wembanyama, or two, he's just not showing up the way we want him to for $27 million per year. And showing up what we want him to, I think just, again, if he's not forcing his way into the rotation, and he's not playing well enough to eat those minutes that are now getting eaten up by these other guards, that to me qualifies as that. So ultimately, when I'm looking at a trade like this, to give up 2 firsts, like a pick swap back to the Celtics, 2 firsts for an expiring Anfernee Simons, makes me think we're undervaluing Devin Vassell, because this is the reason the trade is structured like this. Again, the article down below expands a bit upon it, but it's structured like this simply because in this world, the San Antonio Spurs are getting off of 3 years of Devin Vassell's contract. And by the way, this is not like an off-season trade. This is like a before the deadline trade. Because look, we've heard talks about Anfernee Simons. The Sixers are looking at him. The Nuggets are looking at him. And because look, he shot 38%. This is from the article as well, by the way, from 3 on 8.5 attempts per game. Over the last 4 years. Over the last 4 years, this dude is shooting 38% on 8.5 attempts a game, averaging 20 points per game. So Anfernee Simons is obviously an incredible player. But I genuinely don't see why this is the solution for San Antonio. Because yes, the big thing with this is that Anfernee Simons is on an expiring contract that is almost exactly the same amount of money as Devin Vassell. So the reason the Spurs give up these picks in this trade is to free up 3 extra years of cap while bringing in a guy who is a better shooter in a vacuum, I would say, than Devin Vassell. It doesn't solve your positional logjam at all, because Anfernee Simons is going to come off the bench and again try eat into Julian Champagne's minutes. Maybe Champagne plays the 3 because Simons is not really capable of playing the 3 like Vassell is, nor is Simons anywhere near the defender Vassell is if Vassell is on his game. Regardless, Simons is not a horrendous defender, but he's not very good regardless, and he's 6'3". He's smaller, so he can't guard the 3s. So the idea of giving up some picks and Vassell for just purely basically 30 mil off the books at the end of this year, that would add Anfernee Simons to the list of Harrison Barnes and Kelly Olynyk. That'd be 30. That'd be another 50. What is that? 35. It's like 60 plus million, 60, 65 million all coming off the books. That helps De'Aaron Fox's contract feel a little bit better, and it helps make a bit more room for Sochan's eventual extension. Plus, you can make some other room for MLE kind of stuff. So ultimately, while this trade in a vacuum, I don't think is worth it for San Antonio, because myself, I'm a Devin Vassell truther. I think he's going to come out there, and while I agree, I think he is the odd man out in this rotation, I really think that this guy's going to come in and have an incredible season and shock a lot of people who are doubting him. So, if this trade's to go down today, I guess I could maybe see, oh yeah, you free up a bunch of cap and you give up a couple of picks for it. To me, this is not what San Antonio needs to use these draft picks for in trades. If San Antonio is going to use draft picks in a trade, it should be to bring in someone that is a better fit longer term for the Spurs, not to free up cap. Because again, in this era with the first, second apron, you're not really just going to be able, especially with San Antonio and all these extensions coming up and Fox just signing his, you're not going to be able to just go make a big splash in free agency. The best you could hope for is trading for another, superstar level player. And so if you want to do that, holding on to your picks is the best idea. Freeing up cap like that is valuable, but to me, that's not what our picks need to be doing. And while Simons is a short-term shooting solution, I don't see this as something that actually benefits the Spurs long-term. But I need to hear from you. What is Devin Vassell's value to you? Is it worth getting rid of him just to get a better shooter in the short term for 1 year and have more flexibility in the future? Is that worth it to you? Or to you, if you're moving on from Vassell, would you need a guy that fits the team better longer term in return for him? Because that's what I would want. But there's not many of those guys that are typically on the market. Those 3 and D guys. Trey Murphy is one of them. Herb Jones is not on the market, but he's another type of guy, right? Would need to hear your thoughts on this, because this trade is kind of blowing my mind. But again, it just opens Pandora's box of other questions of what could possibly be happening. But listen, that'll do it for this episode of Spurs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in every single day, all off season long. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you on the next one.